Welcome to Aging Gayfully. We're about adventure, leisure, travel, being a citizen of the world, traveling to destinations, and being a part of the global community as we age and prosper in body, mind, and spirit.
Welcome to Aging Gayfully. I'm Josh.
And I am Chris. How
Chris,
are you,
it is
Josh?
lovely to see you. I'm tickled pink to see you.
I'm speechless. I'm happy. I'm happy to see you. But I'd rather you be tickled purple.
Yeah, well, you listen, take what you can get, all right?
Yeah, that's right. You got to take what you can get, you never know.
How's your week been?
My week's been fabulous. I got good health report and, my fall a few weeks ago, well, I was thinking I had cardiac issues, but I don't. So
that is exceptional news.
Yeah, you eliminate one med, but then you got to deal with another. You got to deal with another issue. So,
we talked off air about this and the fact that you were getting checked out, and I felt for you because it must be just so frustrating to, get in shape, lose all of this weight, and then have what may or may not be a setback. That must be incredibly frustrating.
Right, because you especially as you age and you lose all this weight, I think it's 55 pounds since January 1st, your body metabolism changes. And of course,
yeah,
I previously have had atrial fibrillation and all that. And when all these dizziness issues came in about 6-8 weeks ago, right when I fell, I'm thinking this is all cardiac. Because I'm fortunate I don't really take a whole lot of medications.
Yeah.
And so I never thought about one of the meds being a problem, especially after losing all the weight. And sure enough, you go to the cardiologist, and I needed to go to the urologist, not the cardiologist, but all these ologists. And now I prefer to go to a mixologist at a bar. That would be.
Well, as long
how about
as
a mixologist? Let's go visit your local mixologist.
Yes, I was going to say, as long as they check all of your ends to make sure that everything is okay, because you're getting checked from stem to stern here.
Well, I know we're going to talk another important issue about loneliness today, but one of the things that this appointment did for me on Tuesday, because I had, my mind was ready to go for an open heart bypass surgery. Yeah. I was thinking, this is where this is all heading. And within about 5 minutes to going through, my copious notes and I had blood pressure readings for 10, 15 days in a row. The lowest was 88 over 56. I mean, I was thinking about calling the chaplain, yeah. But that's where your mindset was going. And immediately after the doctor said, well, let's look at your meds. And he looked at the one for the bladder and he said, here's your problem. Remember the old, I could have had a V8. Remember that?
Yes.
Because I never, I never related it to the bladder. Now I got to deal with the bladder issue, but that's that's just a part of aging gayfully.
Sure. There you go. No. And happy
we are that's all
it was.
How do you like that segue into your wonderful introduction you're going to do on loneliness?
It's great. Thank you. We are going to talk about loneliness. And one thing that I'll say about loneliness is that, and then I'll dig a little into the research, but loneliness is something that seniors struggle with and deal with. Hell, everyone struggles and deals with it at one point or the other, but particularly seniors. And we'll talk about that. But loneliness at the end of the day is not a weakness. It's a signal. It's a signal that something essential is missing. And that's kind of what I want to talk about right now, the fact of that. But let's start with the facts. According to the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, more than 1/3 of adults age 45 or older feel lonely, and nearly 1/4 of adults age 65 and older are socially isolated. So
Give me those numbers
in.
again. Give me those numbers.
1/3 of adults age 45 and older feel lonely. So that's
45 and older.
That's younger even than the demographic that we're mostly talking to right now. And then 1/4 of adults age 65 and older are socially isolated. And so that's even one step further than the internal feeling of loneliness. That's externally being socially isolated for a number of reasons. And loneliness, it's not just an emotional inconvenience. It has physical consequences. As I like to say, all of the parts of our body and our mind, our emotions, all connected to each other. So something emotionally isn't right, it's going to affect you physically. That's just a thing. And if something physically isn't right, then it'll affect you emotionally. I know that when I get anxious or upset, what are the physical manifestations for me? I feel it in the pit of my stomach, and that's a physical manifestation. My stomach gets sour, and that's all because of this emotion that I'm feeling. And so the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, reports that social isolation is associated with, now get this, 50% increased risk of dementia, 29% increased risk of heart disease, 32% increased risk of stroke. Get this. It's even linked to early mortality at rates comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes per day. Social isolation can have the same consequences when it's prolonged as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That should wake us up.
I'm kind of flabbergasted, especially as it relates to the smoking. I mean, that really...
I had no idea. No idea. Like, I knew the consequences of isolation because we just went through a period of prolonged isolation through the pandemic.
Right.
And I work at a senior community, and we had to, particularly in the early going, we had to ask people to socially isolate for their health, for their physical well-being. And I'm not here to legislate whether that was actually necessary or not. We did the best that we could at the time, and I think that we kept people safe in doing so. However, let's not kid that the social isolation didn't have a physical effect as well.
Well, I'm going to tie this into a healthy heart, because your heart, while it's the mechanism of your body per se, it's the engine. There's two components to your heart. There's the physical component and then the emotional component. And one kind of works with the other. And that loneliness, that I think it's safe to say we've all experienced loneliness at one part, some parts in our life. And I would imagine, and you have a little bit more experience in this than I do, because you work in senior living. I've done tons of presentations, and the comments that I always get is how lonely people are within a community. And how do you combat that?
Well, the first thing is being aware that it is so.
Right.
The first thing is understanding why it is so.
Mm-hmm.
You have people who retire and they think, oh, life's going to be a cruise ship now. I can do whatever I want whenever I want. But that sours pretty quickly when you realize that for a lot of people, they had meaning and purpose because they had a job, they had a career, they had something that they invested their time and their talents in day after day, week after week, year after year. And purpose and meaning are a big driver in satisfaction, in contentment, in joy.
And wellness. It all
Yep.
it's a circle, so to speak. And if one of those circles has a crack, then it impacts the whole person.
Sure. Sure. So,
And again, I think, what does loneliness, does it mean something different to people? I mean, am I lonely because I miss the companionship that I once had? Or am I lonely because, my hearing just isn't as good as it used to be, and I don't want to go to these events because it's very frustrating for me when I always have to say, can you repeat that? Or what did you say? Or you go to a movie and you only pick up a third of what's being said. And I think what really makes it even more traumatic is when those realities aren't acknowledged, both by the person who's going through the struggle. I don't want to be a bother. I don't want to tell anybody. And then by the, what would be a correct word here, Josh? The provider, maybe, the people who are delivering the content that really aren't aware that there could be some people in their audience that struggle with hearing or seeing, or those parts of life that we often take for granted. But I think one of the compelling components of the statistics that you gave was the age, 45 and above. I mean, that to me, that really stood out. I mean, I wasn't surprised about the 65 and above, but the 45 and above really stood out to me.
I saw another statistic today that traced people's level of happiness. And for whatever reason, this is a little bit off topic, but you reminded me of it. For whatever reason, people's happiness tends to go down sharply, and the bottom of that valley is the age 50. And then after you pass 50, it starts to go up again. I thought that was really interesting. I don't understand necessarily why that is, unless our society has made this number 50 be a little bit more scary than it is. But I thought that was an interesting statistic. I didn't get that so much.
Yeah,
but I don't want to take us off the topic. I just
no,
thought
but
that was interesting.
they're milestones. Look at it
Yeah.
in some milestones.
Yeah, I guess so. But it's very, very, very smart that you are pointing out that isolation, it comes from all these different factors. You mentioned hearing loss, vision loss, loss of mobility, of course, loss of loved ones, relocation, retirement. All of these things are major life events, and all of them mess with our sense of safety, mess with our sense of emotional safety, and either external things separate us, or even more likely as we start to withdraw ourselves.
Well, right, and I think the other component of this is, and you probably see this readily. People start disengaging for whatever reason, but what's often missed is finding out the reason why they're disengaging and trying to help solve that and let that person be heard. Because a lot of times that's what the remedy is. I just want to be heard.
Yeah.
I want to
It's
be
a fundamental need of humanity, both to understand other people and to be understood by other people.
Yeah. Can I interject a real estate story into this?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, this is one of my other lives, but I became aware of a person. He was a senior, a beautiful condo, but every realtor that came in to interview him, or for him to interview them, well, whatever the all the realtors told him that in order to sell your condo, you had to paint the condo because the paint color was bad. And I kind of got the opportunity when, again, this is another life ago, and I ended up interviewing with the fellow, and I looked at the paint color and I thought, oh, that's not really good, and he mentioned right off the bat, he said, everybody wants me to paint, and I don't really see why I need to paint, and got into the nitty gritty of it, and learned that he was colorblind. He couldn't.
Oh my goodness! I didn't see that punchline there.
Yeah. So for him, what he was seeing was not what everybody else was seeing. And again, it just took, I forget how many realtors he interviewed, but when we had that conversation, I just dug a little bit deeper to find out, well, what is the issue with, why are all these people asking him, to paint? And I said, there's an easy solution to this. Just, you're living here. You should live the way you want to live, but maybe you offer a credit for painting at closing. You shouldn't paint your house or your condo. You're living here. But when I learned why, then it all made sense. And it all made sense. So, and I think that comes back to what we were just talking about. What's the reason why these things are happening? You can never assume.
Yeah, and part of it too is being insightful enough to recognize these things in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that some people suffer from loneliness, and they don't really know that they're suffering from loneliness. They know that they're suffering. They know that they don't feel well. Maybe they're thinking that the reason why they don't feel well is because this hurts and that hurts and stomach hurts and all of these things. When the reality is that, as I mentioned before, loneliness has a physical toll that it takes on us, and when we are suffering from that disconnection from people, because we're wired for connection,
yes,
these other things happen. And so I think,
right.
or my hope is that someone is listening to this and saying, all of these feelings that I have, it may be all coming from the fact that I'm isolated. I'm feeling alone. Now, I do want to say here that there's a big difference between solitude and isolation. I like me some time alone sometimes.
Sure.
It's crucial.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an introvert. I need my time alone. But that's chosen. As opposed
You're an introvert?
to... Yeah. That should not be a surprise to you. Did you not know that?
No, it is.
Oh,
I knew that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, come on now. Get out of here.
Well, we're both introverts, but we both like... we both like to create content. We both like to have conversations, but I at least for me, if there was a big party, you'd find me in the corner.
That's right. You're happy to be there, but you just want to watch.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Well, introvert, extrovert, it's a fundamental survivor need for us to connect with other people.
Right. We still
And
long
so
for that connection. Hmm.
that's a universal.
Right. Hmm.
Have you
Doesn't make
heard
any
of this
difference.
this idea of when babies have failure to thrive?
Um, can you give me that again? Because I didn't hear it.
This idea that babies can actually die from a lack of touch. It's called failure to thrive, and it's just right out of the womb ingrained in us that we desire, that we need closeness, and if we don't get closeness, that there can be consequences. And there have been babies that have suffered deep consequences because they have a lack of touch.
Um, oh goodness, this is going to dig into because I feel like I really need to. Obviously, I don't have kids. You have had kids. Um, I don't remember my parents ever touching me.
Yeah.
Well,
Hugs.
I could remember my father touching me, but not for all the right reasons. Affection goes a long way,
It does.
and it molds how you feel as you continue to move forward.
I'll say as a father, like I didn't have, you're talking about, I was only spanked once, right? So at least it sounds like that perhaps that was a different situation that you may have had. But there certainly wasn't any sort of affectionate touch. There wasn't really hugging at all.
Yeah, no,
Now,
no, none of that. Yeah,
as a result, I'm very like demonstrative with my
yes.
children, with all of
Well,
them.
you hugged me last year, so
I did. I did.
you,
I got my
you
one
did.
Chris hug.
Well,
Hopefully,
there's probably another one in the future. We just have to.
let's not push it. Um, so I recognized, at least by the time that I had kids, that closeness was something that I desired. That I want to make sure that my kids always got.
Right, it's important.
And again, especially
I
when you're dealing
probably,
with,
if I'd had kids, I probably would have loved them too much. I would have held them all the time.
that's right, love them and hug them and call them George. Um,
Now I can. Now with my nieces and nephews, I can love them and hug them, and then give them back to their my siblings.
well, what I want people to get out of this conversation is the necessity for human connection, and whatever that looks
Right,
like in
right.
a healthy way.
Hmm.
And that probably means that once you realize that this is so, that you have to take steps to initiate that.
You got to find your comfort zone with it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But part of this is my opinion now, and we can certainly talk about this. Part of that comfort zone is settling into enough vulnerability to recognize your need and to accept help when it is offered.
Asking for help is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness.
Mm.
We often don't look at it that way. I don't want to be a bother.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes people say I don't want to be a bother and they mean it, and I think sometimes people say I don't want to be a bother, but really I don't want to risk being rejected.
Well, right. And I think the other part of that is oftentimes two things: we don't know how to ask for help. And then another component of this is if I'm asking for help, then I'm kind of admitting I can't do it myself. And that, I mean, it just kind of flows from there because, I just I can use me as an example. I mean, I recognize there's things that I would love to do again, but I just can't. I couldn't go out and bowl much as I would like to be, much as my competitive juices are still there, the reality is the body just might fall apart on the approach. Clean up on lane 3.
Yeah, that's right. Bring them up.
But again, but if we don't at least reach out and let somebody know, I mean, that's kind of more than half the battle, I think. Because even in that interaction, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be talking to somebody that actually cares.
Yeah. People will recognize that universal need.
I would imagine that everybody at your place of employment is comfortable approaching you because you have that ability to make people feel comfortable. You're approachable.
Well, thank you. I try. I am intentional about it. Let's be clear, because I understand the need is there, and I felt it as well. Like, I've had periods of time where I was lonely. For me, mostly as a kid, I was lonely, and I went through a divorce, and so there were times of intense loneliness there as well. So yeah, it looks different though. It looks different for everyone.
Right. Yeah, there's no cookie cutter when it comes to this issue, but other than having the comfort to recognize it and reach out. And that's going to be different for everybody.
So let me ask you, when you have felt your loneliness, how do you deal with that? How do you reach out to people, being the person that you are? Like, how have you done it before?
Well, I think there's different stages of loneliness. There's the grief that comes with a loss, and that is different than I don't know how to frame this, but that is, for me, when going through a loss, 2 or 3 things happened on a regular basis. I either clammed up, stayed to myself, or I tried to engage when I could. Over the years, there's fits of loneliness that enter the your mindset. It's like I've been captivated recently by, I'm going to go back to bowling. Been captivated recently by watching reels on Facebook of bowlers. It's like, I miss that part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that again comes back to the loneliness. Is do I miss it as much for me to dwell on it? No, but when you start dwelling on things that you miss or things that you can't do, I think that accelerates the loneliness. And that's when it's important to reach out to a trusted friend or a confidant or somebody on staff at a community, or being connected to a community, whether that's faith-based or a group of folks that get together on a regular basis. Like a lot of women have the garden club. Where do you find that camaraderie where you know that you're completely accepted, even in your imperfections, that you probably highlight more than they do?
Yes. Well, it's a lot to think about. Like I said, if I can leave everyone with one point, with one thing to think about, it is, how is it that you feel connected? And do you feel that way right now? What type of person do you feel safe with? And do you feel that way right now?
Right. Do you have an outlet? So important.
Well, I do want folks to feel free to reach out to us if they want to talk about any of this, if they want to
Very much
relate
so.
their stories, if they want to talk about how maybe they've gone through loneliness and then gone past it. Any of these stories we'd love to hear. Chris, how can people
Yeah.
get a hold of us?
They can email us at yesiam@aginggayfully.com. That's yes, I am at aginggayfully.com.
And if they want to know a little bit more about us?
Well, they can go to Gainesville and look you up in the phone book and go to.
They don't have phone books anymore. Get out of here.
They don't have phone. Wait a minute. No, see, wait a minute. They don't have phone. But that makes sense. No,
I can't even remember the last time I got a phone book.
You got this big stack of yellow pages.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh no, just go to the website. Yes, I am at AgingGayfully.com. We are working on a new website, but it'll happen when it happens.
Wiser words were never said.
That's right.
All right. Well,
and you can subscribe to Aging Gayfully wherever you get your favorite podcast.
And tell your friends.
And tell your friends. Yeah, we're cracking on.
Yes, we are. Well, for those of you watching the video.
Oh, yes. You see, now because I've been watching a lot of videos, and they always, the videos on YouTube, that's where I got the crack on. That's what the British say in France, who are refurbishing chateaus, but that's a whole other conversation. But they always say, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. So, that's what you do on YouTube. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell.
There you go. Ring our bells.
Ring our bells. Oh, there's a song. Ring our bell.
No, we don't have the rights. Stop that.
Oh, that's no. Well,
all right. Well, until next time, we just want you to go out there and age gayfully.
Josh, you're pretty awesome.
See you soon.
See you soon.